Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program and we're studying Chapter 9, which is titled, What is Kamma and How Does It Affect Me? I'm going to be guiding you in meditation to help us get started in our class, but then after our meditation we'll be discussing this topic. If you've read it in the book or you plan to read it, you're going to see lots of details there, including the words of the Buddha to be able to help you understand this topic. In true reality, everything I've been teaching you up to this point has all been about the natural law of Kamma, but now we're going to go in and we're going to demystify this natural law so that you can see the truth for yourself. Remember, everything I've taught you, there's no belief or superstition or mystical or magical things related to the teachings of the Buddha. So I'm going to explain this natural law to you in a way that you can understand what it is and help you cultivate wisdom and awaken to this natural law. Because in one way or another, everything that the Buddha is teaching is coming back to this natural law. So welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. Welcome to all of you guys, whether you're on Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or whether you're listening to this through one of the replays like YouTube or the podcast or something like that. Welcome to everyone. If you'd like to join for meditation, I'm going to start with that by doing some chanting to ease us into meditation. Then I'll provide some guidance once we're in meditation. There'll be a period of time where it'll just be quiet, and then we'll come out with some chanting as well. And keep in mind that these chants aren't mystical or magical or prayer or worship or any kind of rites or rituals or ceremonies or anything like that. It's just to help ease the mind into meditation and get more benefit out of the meditation itself. So you might take a position comfortably sitting on the floor or in a chair or on a sofa or on a bench, anything like this. There's actually 4 positions to meditate in, which we're going to be talking about in 2 weeks from now when we explore Chapter 11, which is all about meditation. I'm going to be teaching you about the seated, lying, standing, and walking positions. But for now, you might just be taking a seated position. So take whatever position's comfortable for you. I'll ease us into meditation with some chanting, and you're welcome to join along in the chants, and then I'll be with some guidance. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso imakawa arahang sammasammuto vicacaranang sammuno sakato rokawitu anutero purisa Dhamma sati satatawa manusarang poto paki. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath. A nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathe in gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in ระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมหาเกวาโพตังมหาเกวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมหาเกวัตตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนมหาเกวัตโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมหาเกวาอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิโตอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภควาติ If you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation, I'd like to once again welcome all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time or you've been joining regularly. Welcome to all of you guys that joined us since we started meditating. Welcome to our class today. Our topic today is what is Kamma and how does it affect me? This is where you're learning about this natural law and being able to go in and actually penetrate into it and understanding it in detail. But in reality, everything that I've been teaching you throughout this program and anything I ever will teach you is all about this natural law of Kamma. And I'm going to help you to be able to understand what it is and how to extinguish all your unwholesome Kamma. You may have heard this word used instead of Kamma. You might have heard the word karma being used. The word karma is from the Sanskrit language, where the word Kamma is from the Pali language. The original teachings of the Buddha are in the Pali language, so people who study the original teachings of the Buddha will tend to use the word Kamma. What it's referring to is this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result. And everything the Buddha is teaching you is to awaken the mind to the wisdom of this natural law. When we talk about awakening the mind, it's to cultivate wisdom. And that's why you've been taught to learn, investigate, and examine teachings, to independently verify those, to see whether they're true or false, and then to practice them in order to train your mind. And as you do so, and you're awakening to the wisdom and you're training your mind's moving closer and closer to this peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy that is the enlightened mind. Because to live in a world that you don't understand, you'll struggle and you'll have difficulties. This is where that sadness and anger and frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, shyness, resentment, jealousy, all that displeasure and sorrow and grief and misery and despair that one experiences in the unenlightened state, it's coming from the mind lacking wisdom and not being able to function through this natural law. Of course, you've learned that it comes from craving, desire, attachment. That's the actual cause of these feelings. But that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for the lack of wisdom. So when we talk about awakening the mind, it's meaning to acquire wisdom. And you do that through learning, reflecting, and practicing. So as I share these teachings with you today, it's important that you don't believe any of the teachings, that you understand them and ask questions as you need help. You've been awakening to natural law of in the world in the past, that you've had unawareness or lack of wisdom of the natural law of gravity at different times. When you were younger, when all of us were born, we didn't understand the natural law of gravity, so we struggled and had difficulties with this natural law. And this natural law of gravity affected all of us, whether we are aware of it or not, just like the natural law of Kamma. But when we lacked wisdom of this natural law of gravity, we struggled and we had difficulties because this natural law was affecting us, and we were falling down, we were busting our elbows, we were breaking our toys, we were breaking other people's stuff. And because of this, we might have cried, we might have been upset, we might have really struggled in the world. But when you awaken to the wisdom of this natural law of gravity, you were able to navigate the world more readily. And that's why you're able to climb ladders and ride bicycles or motorbikes. You're able to get on airplanes and travel all over the world because you understand this natural law of gravity. You've awoken to the wisdom of that. And now you navigate the world more readily. And by the time you were 10 or 12 or 14, you started tying your shoes tighter and looking at the surface of the sidewalk. And this is what has allowed you to experience different results as it relates to the natural law of gravity, because now you're making wiser decisions because your decisions are based in wisdom of this natural law. Well, when you're struggling and having difficulties in life, whether it's stress or anxiety or loneliness or shyness or boredom or whatever it is, this is the mind struggling and having difficulties. And there's certain aspects of this natural law that the mind doesn't understand. So what I'm going to do is help you to understand this in a way that you can awaken to this wisdom, and now you'll be able to navigate the world more really. And this is helping you to explore the natural law itself, where what I've been doing before with the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, and all the other things I've been teaching you, is I've been teaching you the natural law of Kamma, but now we're going to go in and talk about it in detail and what it is and how to actually navigate it and how to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. So first, let's just talk about what is Kamma. It's a natural law that's functioning at all times, in every moment. Everyone's being affected by this, whether you're aware of it or not. And everything that the Buddha taught in one way or another is based in this natural law. He's helping you to see this cause and effect, or this action and result, the results of your decision. He's not teaching you rules and commandments to follow. You wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment if you just followed a bunch of rules, or if you were doing rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship, or if you were just believing in things. You need to be able to see certain decisions that you're making are leading to a certain result or a certain effect. This is your Kamma. This natural law is functioning and affecting us whether we're aware of it or not. Oftentimes, when we experience certain unwholesome results in our life, or even wholesome results, we might say that this is good luck or bad luck, or we might think it's destiny or fate. Or sometimes when we're experiencing unwholesome results in the unenlightened state, we might blame that on other people and thinking that what we're experiencing is either good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate, or it's because of somebody else. But when you come to understand this cause and effect, or this action and result, and how what you're experiencing is the results of your decisions, then you can really be empowered to now make improvements in your life. Because as long as you think things are good luck, bad luck, destiny, or fate, or what you're experiencing is based on other people's decisions, you're locked in. You can't do anything to change your life. That anything you're experiencing is because of something else, and you have no control over that. So I wouldn't resign yourself to that type of thinking, because that's not the actual truth. The true reality of things is that what you experience is a result of decisions that you're making. And the beauty in understanding this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result, the results of your decisions, is that if there's anything in your life that you don't particularly care for and you would prefer not to be occurring, you can just make different decisions and experience different results. You just need to cultivate wisdom of this natural law, understanding the cause and effect that's leading to any particular outcome that you're experiencing, and then just make different decisions and you will experience different results. But with a lack of wisdom of this natural law, you won't be able to do that. So that's why it's so important to study this natural law. There's no being or entity that's overseeing the functioning of this natural law. It's happening as a result of the decisions we're making. Certain decisions through our intentions, our speech, and our actions. We're making certain either harmless decisions and we're experiencing the results of that, or we're making certain harmful decisions and we're experiencing the results of that. So when you learn the Eightfold Path, where the Buddha taught all those factors, part of what he was teaching you was right intention, right speech, and right action. And when you are understanding that and you're making wise decisions around the moral conduct and your mental discipline based all in your wisdom, now with this wisdom and making wiser decisions about how you interact with other beings in the world, you will experience different results. But when you don't understand this natural law, you might be bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive with people, and this is all going to come back to you. So this natural law, it's not a system of punishments and rewards. Sometimes that's what people think when they think about the natural law of Kamma. They think it's like punishments and rewards. You might think about the natural law of Kamma as a sequence of events, that as you make any particular decisions, it's going to set into motion a certain sequence of events. And you would like to have wisdom of this natural law so that as you make a certain decision, you can put a sequence of events in place that are going to be favorable for you or produce wholesome Kamma. The natural law of Kamma, it's not about who's at fault or who's to blame. Sometimes people think of it that way. They might think of it as mystical or magical or like this dark cloud following you around. But that's not what the natural law of Kamma is at all. It's not any of those things. Instead, it's this cause and effect, or action and result. It's the results of your decisions. That's essentially the way to summarize the natural law of Kamma. If this translated to just one English word, I wouldn't use the word Kamma because I wouldn't need it. But because it doesn't translate to just one English word, I still need to use the word Kamma. But whenever you hear that, you can think about it as the results of your decisions. And you're either going to experience wholesome results or unwholesome results, or wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma. So you can demystify this whole natural law by being able to see the truth for yourself. Just like you know with 100% certainty that the natural law of gravity is functioning and affecting you whether you're aware of it or not, and you're making wise decisions now about this natural law, the same thing is true, that you can get to a point where you understand that it's your life, it's your decisions, and then there's certain results that you're going to experience. And then you can be motivated to make wise decisions. And this is why the Buddha is teaching you through meditation and everything else to calm the mind down and keep the mind stable and steady so that you can make wise decisions that are going to produce results. Because when your mind's all shaken up with discontentedness, when it's all, excited and elated and thrilled, you're not necessarily going to make wise decisions. And the same thing's true when you're experiencing painful feelings, when you're angry and sad and frustrated and agitated and annoyed, or feeling guilt or shame or fear or stress or anxiety. You're not going to necessarily make wise decisions in those situations. So while he has all these teachings to help you train your mind to eliminate the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings, which is Kamma itself, he's also helping you to be able to eradicate these pollutions in your mind so that as you make decisions in day-to-day life, you can use your wisdom of this natural law to put into motion certain decisions that are going to produce wholesome results for you. Because obviously you're interested in experiencing wholesome results in your life. You're not interested in, experiencing unwholesome results. So if you understand and start to learn this cause and effect, or action and result, and embracing the fact that it is your life, it is your decisions, and by cultivating wisdom, you can improve the results that you experience. If there's anything in life that you don't particularly care for, you cultivate wisdom and you make different decisions, then you experience different results. Just to get us started understanding the natural law of Kamma through the words of the Buddha, I'm going to share these two teachings with you from the Buddha. Now, in this book series of 13 books, there's one particular book that's devoted to consolidating the teachings of the Buddha about the natural law of Kamma into one book. But we could really say that all 13 books are related to the natural law of Kamma, because the Buddha is teaching you about this cause and effect all the way throughout the entire book series. So while I'm only sharing two particular aspects of the natural law of Kamma here in these particular words of the Buddha, everything that you learn from the Buddha is going to be helping you to understand this natural law of Kamma. But as you start to enter into understanding the natural law of Kamma, there's two important things that these two teachings will share with you and help you to be able to then learn and practice to be able to awaken to the wisdom of the natural law of Kamma. This first one, he says, beings are the owners of their Kamma, the heirs of their Kamma. They have Kamma as their origin, Kamma as their relative, Kamma as their resort. Whatever Kamma they do, wholesome or unwholesome, they are its heirs. What he's essentially teaching you here is that you create your own Kamma. It's not possible for other people to create Kamma for you. So sometimes when people are joking around, they might say, don't give me that bad Kamma, or I'm going to give you my good Kamma, or I'm going to give you some bad Kamma, or something like this. And this is people just joking around, not understanding the natural law of Kamma. So if you have that mindset that other people's Kamma is rubbing off on you, or you're rubbing your Kamma off on other people, this isn't actually possible. That whatever decisions you make, that's what's producing either the wholesome or unwholesome results, or the wholesome Kamma and the unwholesome Kamma. It's based on your decisions. It's not based on other people's decision. Then the second one, he says, the results of Kamma, I say, is threefold, to be experienced in this very life, or in the next rebirth, or on some subsequent occasion. What he's essentially saying here is you can't run and hide from your Kamma. Any decisions you make, either wise or unwise, you're going to experience those results, either wholesome or unwholesome Kamma in this life, the next life, or some subsequent occasion, which is some rebirth after the second one. So it's either the third, fourth, fifth, or what have you. Now remember, there's nothing in the teachings of the Buddha that is to be believed. Even the cycle of rebirth can be independently verified. You may not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but as you continue to go forward in these various programs that I share, there's different times where I share the details to be able to help you be able to independently verify this cycle of rebirth is true. In this group learning program, we're going to be talking a little bit about it when we get to chapter 20. But then as you get into like the Pali Canon English study group and some of the other programs that I have, there's the ability to gain the wisdom of how to independently verify the cycle of rebirth. And you may have already had certain indications of the cycle of rebirth. If you've had an experience of deja vu, for example, where maybe you're doing something right now and it just feels utterly familiar to you, but you know it wasn't in this life that you actually experienced this thing. These are the residual memories of previous lives bubbling up to the surface of the mind. And there's countless ways to independently verify the cycle of rebirth, but that's not what this particular class is about. But because this particular teaching is there, understand that you are experiencing results of decisions that you're making in this life, but you're also experiencing results of decisions that you've made in previous lives. And this isn't punishments or rewards, it's just a sequence of events. So what these two teachings from the Buddha are bringing to your attention is that you create all your own Kamma, and whatever decisions you make, either wise or unwise, it's producing wholesome and unwholesome Kamma, and you can't run and hide from that. So the wise person understanding this would then think, well, okay, let me understand this natural law of Kamma as much as I can, and now start making wise decisions to produce wholesome results. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to explain to you the 4 different types of Kamma to be understood. There's wholesome Kamma and unwholesome Kamma. And then there's old Kamma and new Kamma. You're going to need to understand these 4 things in order to fully awake to this wisdom and fully get to enlightenment. First, let's talk about wholesome Kamma. What wholesome Kamma is any decisions that you're making that are harmless. When you're making harmless decisions where you're not harming other beings, this is going to produce wholesome results or wholesome Kamma. But when you're making harmful decisions, this is going to produce unwholesome Kamma or unwholesome results. Now remember, you can't cause somebody else discontentedness. You can't cause somebody else to be angry, frustrated, agitated, annoyed, or any of those other discontent feelings. It's one's own mind of craving, desire, attachment that's causing that. But you can cause harm to other beings. What harm is where you're harming them physically, you're harming their material possessions, or maybe you're harming their reputation. This is the ways that you can harm an individual. So I could potentially steal someone's car, not that I would do that, but if I stole somebody's car, I'm causing them harm because now they can't go to work and earn money. They can't take their kids to school if they have children. They can't go to the store and pick up groceries and supplies to live their life. So I've harmed this individual. I've harmed their material possessions. I've taken that from them. And now they're going to experience the results of that because of my harm. And now since I've harmed them and I've made this harmful decision, now there's going to be this harm that comes back to me as a result. Not as punishments and rewards, but just as a sequence of events that is occurring. So when we make wise decisions based in harmlessness, which is part of the Eightfold Path where the Buddha teaches you right intention, when you're making wise decisions based in harmlessness, you're not harming other beings, and therefore those decisions aren't going to produce any harm coming back. And then when you're making harmful decisions, these are unwise, and you're now causing harm to other beings, and this is going to produce unwholesome results coming back to you, or unwholesome Kamma. Then there's something called old Kamma and new Kamma. What old Kamma is any decisions that you've made in the past that you're now experiencing the results of in the present moment. And then in the present moment, you have the ability to make decisions that are now going to affect you in the future. This is called new Kamma. So let me give you an example of this one to help you understand it. If you maybe filled out some tax forms about 3 years ago, and you were reporting your income to the government so that they could then tax you, let's just say an individual might lie on their tax forms. Well, now 3 years later, they get a notice in the mail that says, hey, we audited you, we looked at your records, you owe us $1,000, and you owe us $1,000 penalty, and you owe us $1,000 interest. So you now owe us $3,000. This letter that you're getting, this is your old Kamma. It's unwholesome Kamma based on having lied, because we made this unwise decision, we produced this harm, and now we're experiencing this old unwholesome Kamma. That's not punishments and rewards, it's a sequence of events, of things that have occurred. Now in the present moment, we have certain decisions that we need to make. And if we didn't understand this natural law of Kamma with the Eightfold Path and the things that I just taught you, we might think that we can run and hide from this. We might rip up the paper and throw it away. Or we might just set it aside and file it away. Or if we don't know the Eightfold Path, we might call up the government yelling and hollering and cussing and being aggressive and hostile. Or we might write them a nasty letter. Right? And this is all going to be unwise decisions that we're making now in the present moment. So we're now generating new unwholesome Kamma that we're going to now experience the results of that. But if we understand the natural law of Kamma, and we understand our goal is to extinguish the unwholesome decisions in this unwholesome Kamma, now when we get that notice in the mail, we know we can't run and hide from it. And we know that this is because of the decisions that we made that we're getting this letter. So now in the present moment, with wisdom of the natural law of Kamma, we might choose to do something different. We might choose to write a letter or call up our government and say, hey, I apologize. I would like to take full responsibility for this, and I would like to figure out how we can solve this. And you might be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful to this person on the other end of the phone that you're talking to from the government. And now, because you've been so polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, in the present moment, you're making new wholesome Kamma. And now maybe what they say is, hey, we understand. Thank you for taking responsibility for this. We're going to drop off the penalty. We're going to drop off the interest. You just owe us $1,000. And now you might say, hey, I'm so sorry. I'd like to give you that $1,000, but I don't have that money. Is there something that we can do to solve this? And now maybe because you've been so polite, kind, friendly, respectful, they might work out a payment plan for you so that you can pay this over time. And this would be new wholesome Kamma that you're now generating, and you're extinguishing this unwholesome Kamma from the past, which is old Kamma. So there's wholesome Kamma, which is based in decisions that are harmless. These are the wholesome results or the wholesome Kamma coming back to you because you've made harmless decisions. So as you've been learning in this program, you're not harming anybody by listening to my voice, by reading books, by meditating, and that's why it's producing wholesome results for you. But wherever you make harmful decisions, where you're harming someone's material possessions, you're harming them physically, or you're harming their reputation, this is going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome Kamma. And you have certain old Kamma of things that you've done in the past that you're experiencing now. But now in the present moment, you have the ability to make new decisions that are going to produce wholesome Kamma for you in the future. Or if you make unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome Kamma. So in the present moment, you have the ability to produce new Kamma. And what you're looking to do on the path to enlightenment is any decisions that you've made in the past that is coming back to you, that is old, unwholesome Kamma, you would like to extinguish that. Because if you could snap your fingers right now and instantly practice the teachings of the Buddha, which you can't, but if you could, you're still going to experience unwholesome results coming back to you. That's still going to come back to you because you've made unwise decisions in the past. You've got this old Kamma to extinguish. So I'm going to teach you here in a moment how to extinguish your unwholesome Kamma. But first, let me show you the words of the Buddha on how he describes that you're producing wholesome and unwholesome Kamma. And this is connected to something that I taught you last week. Last week, I taught you the 3 poisons or the 3 unwholesome roots or the 3 fires of craving, anger, and ignorance. These are the pollutions that are in the mind that are motivating all unskillful conduct. So craving are those selfish desires, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. And if you get the objects of your affection, you get these pleasant feelings, which are conditional feelings. But if you don't get what you want, you get these painful feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others. And then when your mind's angry or hateful or frustrated or agitated, you might be making certain decisions there. And then where all this is coming from is the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality, the confusion or delusion or misunderstanding. So whenever you're making decisions in craving, anger, and ignorance, these are the 3 unwholesome roots, it's producing unwholesome Kamma. And you can see the words of the Buddha here, where he's explaining that to you, that this is the origin or the cause or the condition or the effect or the action that is creating the effect or creating the result. So whenever you make decisions through your selfishness, through your craving, your longing, your yearning, it's going to produce unwholesome Kamma or unwholesome results. Whenever you make decisions through anger or hatred or ill will, it's going to produce unwholesome results or unwholesome Kamma. And you can see this for yourself because in relationships that you've been in where you've been angry and frustrated and agitated, you might have vented that towards other people through your intention, speech, and actions, and you can see that it produced unwholesome results for you. That there was an argument, there was hostility, maybe you broke up the relationship and ended the relationship. You can independently verify this and see this for yourself, and that's why you're not believing it, but you can see the truth because you have craving, you have anger, and this is all coming from the ignorance or the unknowing of true reality. Whenever you make decisions based in confusion or misunderstanding or lack of wisdom, it's producing unwholesome results. So that's why last week I gave you the solutions, and I've been giving you the solutions all along with the Eightfold Path of how to gradually bring down your craving, anger, and ignorance. As you're gradually bringing down your craving, anger, and ignorance, you're making less and less decisions that are tainted or polluted with craving, anger, and ignorance. So therefore, you're then working to arise the wholesome roots. And when you're arising the wholesome roots, it's now going to produce wholesome Kamma. Whenever you make decisions based in generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, this is now going to produce wholesome results for you. Because generosity is the exact opposite of craving, desire, attachment. With craving, desire, attachment, that's the selfish desires where the mind's holding on, wanting things to be permanent and wanting things to be a certain way, clinging to these things. Your ideas, your opinions, your views, your material possessions, your relationships, your money, all these things, the mind's holding on to them. So what you're being taught to do in order to train your mind to let go is practice generosity. Live open-handedly and be joyful in giving and sharing. That's the exact opposite of craving. Of course, you're using breathing mindfulness meditation as well to reduce and eliminate your craving, desire, attachment, but practicing generosity frequently, daily on an ongoing basis where you're sharing your time, effort, energy, and resources without any expectation of anything in return, this is helping you to train your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. Because when you base your decisions in generosity, it's only going to produce wholesome Kamma or wholesome results. And likewise, if you've been practicing the loving kindness meditation, and now more and more through your intention, speech, and actions, you're starting to be loving and kind, which is a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well, active goodwill towards others. When you base your decisions in loving kindness, this is the exact opposite of anger or hatred or ill will or frustration or agitation. And when you're basing your decisions in loving kindness for this being who you are and all other beings around you, it's going to produce wholesome Kamma or wholesome results. And the same thing is true when you're making decisions based in wisdom. Wisdom of the natural laws, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, of course, the Three Universal Truths, the Five Precepts, all these different teachings that you're learning. Whenever you're basing your decisions in wisdom, it's going to produce wholesome Kamma, because that's the exact opposite of the unknowing of true reality or lack of wisdom or this ignorance or this confusion or misunderstanding. So it's generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom that is producing the wholesome Kamma or wholesome results. So what you're doing on this path is you're gradually bringing down your cravings, your anger, your ignorance, understanding that you're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and do that. It's going to be a gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. And you're making less and less decisions that are producing unwholesome results. But then you're also gradually increasing your generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, making more and more decisions through those qualities of mind. And now you're experiencing more and more wholesome results in your life. By the time you've gotten to enlightenment, you've extinguished all your unwholesome Kamma. And I'm going to explain to you how to do that and how to extinguish this so that as your old unwholesome Kamma is coming back to you, you can extinguish it, you can bury it, you can get rid of it. But before I talk about that, let me see if there's any questions here. I would like to pause and see if you guys have anything you'd like to ask in order to understand wholesome and unwholesome Kamma, and then old Kamma and new Kamma. You can ask those questions by putting them into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can electronically in Zoom and open up your mic and ask any and all questions that you like. Okay, we have a question coming in on YouTube. This is from Luke. The question is, if you can only create your own Kamma, then it wouldn't be possible to harm others, because that would imply you harm to actions. It doesn't make sense. No, you're not understanding. So let me help understand. So if you're causing harm to others, you're perhaps here what you're saying is it's their Kamma. Yes, it's their Kamma because they've chosen to be around you. If you're bitter and harsh and hostile and aggressive, they're choosing to be around that. If I'm around somebody who's bitter, harsh, and hostile, I'm going to walk away. This person isn't going to have the ability to harm anything, right? They're not going to be able to harm me physically. They're not going to be able to harm my material possessions, and they're not going to be able to harm my reputation. And if they choose to do any of those things, it's not going to affect me, because they could harm this physical body, but I know it's impermanent. I can just go to the hospital, or I can walk away and ensure that they're not doing that. If they're harming my material possessions, okay, they're stealing my car, stealing my motorbike, stealing something, okay, that's not going to shake up my mind. Or if they're gossiping or slandering about me, okay, that's causing harm to themselves, because people who believe those things and people who choose to go towards those types of things, I'm not interested in being around those individuals anyway. So I'm going to make choices to be around people who are making wise decisions and wholesome decisions. So my choices to be around people who are wise and making wholesome decisions, I'm not experiencing any unwholesome Kamma because I'm not around anybody who's doing unwholesome things. So that is the results of my decisions of having cultivated wisdom of the natural law, and then choosing to spend time with people who are wise and choosing to make decisions that are producing wholesome Kamma. So your decisions that you're making are going to affect you, and the decisions that other people make are going to affect them. But if you're making unwise decisions and somebody chooses to be around you, yes, that is their Kamma, right? But it would be unwise for you to continue to make unwise decisions. You would like to gradually bring down the unwise decisions so that you can produce more and more wholesome Kamma. Okay, if you have any follow-up questions, Luke, there, just let me know. I'm not sure if I fully helped you there, but oftentimes it takes multiple conversations and multiple questions before somebody fully understands. So you need to be able to learn and understand, so feel free to ask additional questions if you like. Let's see, it looks like we have some more questions coming in here. We've got some coming in on Zoom. Looks like Fiona's asking, hello teacher, if you are driving along not harming anyone, but you unexpectedly run over a nail and this causes a flat tire, or a stone flies up and chips your wind screen or your windshield,
or you run over an aerosol and paint spoils the paintwork of your car, are you experiencing unwholesome Kamma? So in this situation, it's a sequence of events, right? You've decided to get a car, you've decided to drive down that street, and yes, there's this nail there. But remember, you're not being punished. This is a sequence of events, and you might consider this to be unwholesome Kamma, that now you're experiencing this, right? But you can also view this as impermanence, that your paint cannot be, or your windshield is not going to be permanently nice. It's going to have some chips in it. So yes, it is your Kamma. Everything you're experiencing is a cause and effect, or action and result. It's a sequence of events, but it's not necessarily that you've absolutely done something to cause this particular thing because now you're the one to blame for this thing. This is oftentimes how people try to view the natural law of Kamma, when in reality, the way that you should think about it is the sequence of events. And in these situations, I would consider this unwholesome Kamma, right? Because you're making a decision that's leading to this particular thing. But now you make decisions that are going to help you in the future. But in these situations, let me just make sure I read them all. Windshield, the paint, and the nail, these are things that you're experiencing because of impermanence, right? That there's nothing did to specifically lead to this particular thing occurring in terms of like an unwholesome result, but it's just a cause and effect of the fact that you're now making a decision to drive a car, have a car, and now you're experiencing the impermanent nature of that. So there are certain things that we do that are a sequence of events that are producing a certain result. And while we oftentimes are thinking of it as wholesome or unwholesome Kamma, there's things like this that is just impermanence. Now, if you get angry or frustrated or agitated about these things occurring, this is unwholesome Kamma, because the mind is having craving, wanting these things to be permanent. And now when you make the decision to not train your mind, for example, and now the mind's getting angry or frustrated or agitated, that discontentedness is your unwholesome Kamma. But just the fact that your windshield got a chip, or paint, got some more paint on your car, you don't necessarily need to view this as unwholesome Kamma, because there isn't anything that you've done that will particularly stop that thing from occurring in the future. This is just the impermanent nature of this car. Okay, so we have some more coming in here. Looks like Julia is saying, thank you, Teacher David. If I have feelings of deja vu, but haven't had these experiences before from this life, this is from a past life. Does that mean I've done exactly the same thing in a previous life? Do we just acknowledge this and let it pass? It is almost like I've lived the same life before. So yes, when you're experiencing deja vu and something's bubbling up as a residual memory, you just let it go. Don't allow your mind to be shaken up by it, and just understand that that's what it is, as a residual memory. So you can have experiences in this life that you are doing something and it feels utterly familiar to you, and you know you've done this before, but it wasn't in this life. This is the residual memories of previous lives bubbling up to the surface of the mind. And you can just acknowledge that and understand that, okay, this is acknowledgement and confirmation for you of the cycle of rebirth, and then just let those things go. And the reason why this is helpful is that, like in my example, I've had lots of memories of past lives. And there were times where I was having memories of being murdered, because I was murdered in my life before this. And if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth and that these things are occurring, when you're having those residual memories of being murdered, for example, it would really shake you up if you didn't understand the cycle of rebirth. And you could have other traumatic thoughts and experiences. So deja vu isn't a feeling. It's an experience that you're experiencing residual memories. And whenever you're having those, you can just train your mind to let them go, realizing that it's confirming for you the cycle of rebirth, but you don't necessarily need to take any action based on those things. Okay, we have some more coming in, something from Robert here. My friend's 3-year-old daughter unexpectedly died from a rare genetic heart condition. Is that due to unwholesome Kamma from a previous life? Is the unwholesome Kamma we experience from others based on our own Kamma in some way? How would we know what Kamma is coming from a previous life? Okay, so there's a bunch of things here, Robert. So whenever you're experiencing a health issue with the physical body so early in life like that, this is old Kamma from our previous lives, because there hasn't been enough decisions in this life, because the life is so young, to be able to experience unwholesome results related to the body. So for example, my mom died when she was 66 years old from pancreatic cancer. She died from that cancer because all through her life she ate extremely unhealthy food. Even though many of us tried to help her to eat and showed her to eat healthy food, it was her choices that led to that particular illness and her dying at the age of 66 rather than living much longer, which she could have done if she would have made different choices about her food intake. But a 3-year-old child isn't able to make those decisions, and it's too young, and the body isn't going to be affected in the same way. So we're experiencing certain results in our life from our previous lives. And when it relates to the health of the body early through life like that, this is from our previous lives. This is our old Kamma from our previous life and being reborn. Again, it's not punishments and rewards, it's a sequence of events. And having been born into that particular body could only sustain life for those 3 years. And perhaps this being got to enlightenment, at that time, because you can get to enlightenment during your life or at death. So perhaps this being at 3 years old did get to enlightenment and now they're no longer being reborn. Or perhaps they needed to be reborn and now they're going to be reborn into some future existence. That is unwholesome Kamma previous life. How to know whether it's from a previous life or not is if you understand the cause and effect, you can look at any effect that you're experiencing and you're able to see that there hasn't been anything in this life that you decided that produced a particular result. So that example that you have with the 3-year-old girl, you can see that there's nothing that she did in 3 years that led to that heart condition, that this is just the nature of the body and that the body couldn't sustain life, this sequence of events. Versus like my mom, you can see like, whoa, there was a trend of, all these years of eating unhealthy food that led to this particular illness and this condition. So you can see whether they were decisions you made in this life that led to a particular thing or from a previous life. One of the beauties about the Natural Law of Kamma is it's the most unbiased teacher you will ever find, right? Like it will show you every single moment whether you're making wise decisions or unwise decisions. So what we typically do when we experience unwholesome results in the unenlightened state is we will look for somebody else to blame, right? And this isn't going to produce beneficial results in your life because it's not other people that you're experiencing these things that are coming back to you. But when you start to understand this natural law of Kamma and you understand anything you experience is results of decisions that you're making, as you're experiencing any particular results, not just unwholesome Kamma, but even wholesome Kamma, it's wise to look at that and penetrate into that and try to figure out what are the decisions that I made that led to this result so that I can either continue to make those types of decisions, thus producing wholesome Kamma, or refrain from making those decisions so that I can no longer experience this unwholesome Kamma. You can look at your life and see whether it's your financial possessions or your material possessions, your relationships, where you live, your job, your relationships in your business and in your professional life. You can look at the results that you're experiencing and figure out what are the decisions that I'm making that is leading to this particular wholesome result, or what are the unwise decisions that I'm making that's leading to this particular unwholesome result. You might think about this like inner development or self-analysis, or looking inward at your own mind, being reflective and contemplative, because this is what's going to help you to be able to cultivate wisdom of the natural law of Kamma. The Buddha refers to it as thinking and pondering, that if you're thinking and pondering, you're looking at your life and what you're experiencing in life and trying to figure out what are the decisions that you made that led to any particular result. And sometimes students will reach out to a teacher who has more wisdom about the natural law of Kamma in order to get that insight and that help, whether it's decisions that you've already made and you're looking to understand why you're experiencing any particular wholesome or unwholesome result, or sometimes students prior to a certain decision, they might reach out to a teacher and ask for help to understand the natural law of Kamma so that they can shape their decisions. Of course, the student's making their own decision, but they would like some insight from somebody who understands the natural law of Kamma so that they can make these decisions more wisely. And I know you've done that before, Robert, as well. So looking and reflecting on the things that you're experiencing in life, this thinking and pondering that the Buddha describes, this analysis of the mind and analysis of your life, this is what will help you to cultivate this wisdom of this natural law, so that now, with that more wisdom, you can make improved decisions or continue to make the same wise decisions that you're making in order to that lead to any particular result. And what the Buddha is teaching you throughout his teachings are the wise and unwise decisions that we can make that lead to either wholesome or unwholesome results. And that's where you learn, reflect, independently verify, and practice to be able to experience the results. And then you've got this third thing in here too, Robert, let me just find it. Is the unwholesome kamma we experience from others based on our own kamma in some way? So if you're experiencing unwholesome kamma, it's from decisions you're making. So for example, let's just say you're in a partnership with a life partner, and let's just say your life partner's lying or having sexual misconduct, or performing in wise work, and now maybe they get arrested, maybe they get a demotion at work, they get laid off at their job, or whatever it is. You're going to be experiencing the results of that, right? Because you have less income for the household. You're experiencing having to go to jail and bail them out, or hire lawyers and all these different things. You're experiencing the results of that. And it's their decisions that led to those particular things, but it's your decision to be that person's partner. And now you're experiencing the results of that decision, that you decided to select this particular partner, and that's why it's your kamma. It's not possible for somebody else to produce kamma for you, because in this situation, you have the ability to extinguish this. You could either help your partner to gain wisdom and understanding and learning and making improved decisions, or you could choose to leave that partner and find a different partner. But when we select a partner, this is a very impactful decision in our life, because whoever we select as a life partner, now whatever decisions they make, it's going to affect us. But it's not their kamma affecting us, it's our kamma, because we've made the decision for them to be our partner. So you can see that very clearly in this type of example. So you're experiencing the results of your decisions. And in order for you to get to the peaceful and joyful mental state and a peaceful and joyful life, you're going to need to make improved decisions that lead to improved results. And where you see certain difficulties and problematic situations, you're going to need to improve the decisions that you're making. And I'm going to give you some examples from my life where I had to do this in order to improve the results that I was experiencing. Great questions, guys. Here's another question from Julia. She says, what if you accumulate bad kamma without intention? Like, for example, you are walking very fast and you accidentally bump someone on the street, or contributing to global pollution by using a car. Is that bad kamma? So I don't think about it as good or bad kamma. I think about it as wholesome or unwholesome kamma. And everything is a result of certain decisions or certain sequence of events that you've put in place. And in this example that you're giving, where you're hurriedly walking down the street, this is due to craving, desire, attachment, right? You bump into somebody and now they get angry and hostile. Maybe they punch you, right? This is unwholesome kamma coming back to you because you've made this decision through craving to hurry up. I'm rushing to work, and now I've bumped into somebody, and now maybe they punch us in the face, right? Whereas if you took your time, you were calm, and you gradually made your way to work, now you show up to work, and now maybe the boss is angry because you're late. Well, that's their craving. And now you have a decision to make. Am I still interested in working for this boss who doesn't understand I'm sometimes going to be 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes late because I can't always be on time because of impermanence? Am I interested in still working for somebody like this? Or am I going to make a different decision and go work somewhere else? So either way, you're experiencing your kamma. If you hurry up and get to work, and you step on someone's foot and then they punch you, this is based in craving, desire, attachment. But also if you go to work and now this person is angry and bitter and hostile with you, yes, they're causing that themselves, but it's your decision to work at this job and work for this particular person who's now getting angry and bitter and hostile just because you came in a few minutes late to work. And either way, you can make different decisions. You can choose to take your time on your way to work and not step on that person's foot. You can also make different decisions by choosing a different place to work. So in order to create kamma, there needs to be intention behind it. So using some of the things that you guys have just asked, let me give you another example. My son asked me about some of these things not too long ago. That let's just say you're walking down the street and a cockroach comes out on the sidewalk and you accidentally step on it. and now the bug has died. You haven't created any unwholesome Kamma here. Instead, there wasn't any intention here. So there wasn't any intention to kill this bug. It was you walking down the street and it happened to come under your foot and you happened to squash it. So there needs to be intention, because in order for you to have unwholesome Kamma, the decision has to be made through craving, through anger, or through ignorance. In this situation, you haven't had any craving, anger, or ignorance in that situation. There was no intention behind it. You were just walking down the street and now you stepped on this bug. But conversely, if you were walking down the street and you were stomping and you were, intentionally trying to kill ants and cockroaches as you're walking down the street, now there's a certain amount of craving, there's a certain amount of anger in there, and there's a certain amount of ignorance that is producing this unskillful action of walking down the street and stomping on bugs. And as you do so, now it's going to produce unwholesome Kamma for you because you have intention to actually do this. So there needs to be intention behind any particular decision in order for it to produce Kamma. So this is how you can start to understand the natural law of Kamma. So good questions. Let me answer some more questions here coming in on YouTube. Luke says, thank you for your answers, Teacher David. You're welcome, Luke. Pleased to help you. Tommy asked a question here. I'm going through an unwholesome breakup with my wife. My mind goes between waves of anger and sadness. I also feel happy at peace between the waves of anger and sadness I have been applying. Dhamma practice and meditating 13 minutes daily for 9 months. I am all over the place. What do I need to know to make good Kamma? So here, if you're choosing and your wife's choosing to separate, you guys have obviously made those decisions for various reasons. You need to train your mind to let go. And this is why in some situations you're angry and sad because you're holding on to the relationship, wanting it to be permanent. But then at different times, your mind is starting to let go a little bit. And that's where the peacefulness and the happiness is coming in, because the mind is letting go. So the more and more your mind lets go here, the more that you're going to experience the peace and the joy, because you can let go of this relationship. But the more that you hold on to it, continuing to crave it and trying to make it permanent, now the mind's going to just feel angry and sad. So by practicing breathing mindfulness meditation and practicing generosity, this is going to train your mind to let go. So you need to move on. So continuing to meditate, but being sure to meditate the way that I did at the beginning of class, because oftentimes people aren't meditating in the way that the Buddha taught to train your mind to let go. So if you weren't part of the meditation when we started class, or you haven't learned meditation with me, I have various resources to help you learn meditation. You're going to need to learn breathing mindfulness meditation and the Buddha to cut things off and let it go, so you can build up the quality of allowing the mind to let go. And you're going to need to practice generosity, where you're giving and sharing without any expectation of anything in return, because that's going to train your mind to let go too. As you choose to go through this divorce, it's best to create a win-win situation. Sometimes when we're going through a divorce, that lawyers are involved, courts are involved, and I want to win and really stick it to this person. And of course, you haven't said anything like that, but sometimes that's the way that the mind thinks when we go through a divorce. But instead, what I would encourage you to do is try to figure out a win-win situation where both of you guys can emerge from this and be whole, because you don't need to end a relationship in a degrading and detrimental way. And if there's not lawyers involved yet, you might be able to do this through mediation, or you might need to do it through lawyers in order to get to a point where she and you both are emerging from the relationship in a position that allows you to both go on in life and experience improved results, where you're not interested in being bitter and harsh and hostile with your soon-to-be ex-wife. You're not interested in leaving them in a situation of detriment where they're struggling to rebuild their life. But instead, as you separate assets and you move on, try to do it in such a way that you can be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, and both of you can be whole when you walk out of the relationship and you're not taking digs on each other. And this will help you, particularly if there's children involved, because if there's children involved, you're going to continue to have a relationship regardless to some degree, and you would like to try to have a politeness and kindness and respect in the relationship. It doesn't mean you're going to have the same type of relationship you've had in the past, but at least when you see each other at graduations or events with the children or weddings or things like this, that you can have cordial speech with each other. You can be kind and friendly with each other. And this is going to be helpful if you're polite, kind, friendly, respectful throughout the divorce process, and you figure out a way that both of you can win and walk away feeling whole, and you guys can rebuild your life either independent or maybe with new partners if that's what you're choosing to do. And then, of course, maintaining your meditation practice and all of that good stuff. All right, I'm not seeing any other questions. So what I'm going to share with you now is how to eliminate your unwholesome kamma, because that's what you're ultimately doing on the path to enlightenment. You can't snap your fingers, instantly transform your mind, and instantly start practicing these teachings. But even if you could, you're still going to be experiencing unwholesome kamma coming back to you because you've made unwise decisions in the past. But now that you understand that you can't do that, let me explain to you what we've been doing throughout our entire life. All throughout our life, it's like we've been putting mud into our garden hose. We've been putting all this mud into the garden hose. These are the unwise decisions that we've been making. We've been putting this mud into our life, or putting this mud into the garden hose. But now what you're choosing to do, if you're choosing to learn with me and you're choosing to learn the teachings of the Buddha through all the resources that I share, you're choosing to hook your garden hose up to the faucet. And now you're opening up this clean water in the faucet and get clean water moving through this garden hose because it's packed up with mud. Now, if you're learning with me once every 6 months, if you're meditating once a month, you've got like a little drip going through this garden hose, and you're not going to clear this out in this lifetime. But if you're coming to classes regularly, if you're reading the books, if you're asking questions when you need help, if you're meditating on your own, you're opening up that faucet wider and wider and wider and putting more and more clean water through this garden hose. And now, as you do so, it's going to spit mud for a while because you've got all this mud in your garden hose. It's going to spit mud. But every once in a while, you're going to get some clean water coming through that garden hose. But then it's going to spit some more mud because it's impacted with all this mud. But if you get enough clean water going through this garden hose, it's going to spit mud and you're going to see some clean water occasionally. But eventually, after you get all that mud out, it's going to be nothing but clean water coming out of your garden hose. So essentially, if you put enough wise decisions into your life through training your mind and awakening to the wisdom of these teachings, eventually enough wise decisions into your garden hose, enough wise decisions into your life, you'll clean out all this mud because this mud is impermanent. All the unwholesome results of your old kamma coming back to you, your old unwholesome kamma coming back to you, this can be extinguished. And the way that you do that is through learning and practicing the Eightfold Path, where that example that I gave you of the government sending you a letter, if you now practice the Eightfold Path where you're polite, kind, friendly, and respectful, practicing right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration, you're making different decisions. You're making improved decisions now based in the natural law of Kamma. Where in the past, we might have ripped that letter up and thrown it away. We might have called up the government and yelled and hollered and cussed at them or something like this. And that's because of our lack of wisdom of this natural law of Kamma. But now understanding the Eightfold Path, you start making new decisions in the present moment. Any kind of unwholesome Kamma that's coming back to you, you make different decisions, and now those improved decisions, those wise decisions, are going to extinguish your unwholesome kamma so that you can produce new kamma that is wholesome. So let me give you some examples from my life on this. When I was growing up, I grew up in a very hostile and aggressive environment, and I kind of learned to be that kind of person growing up. And I was that way to a certain degree as I was growing up and aging and things like this. And even when I met my wife, who I'm with now, we've been together for 17 years, of course I was polite and respectful to a certain degree, but there were different times in our relationship where I would be grumpy and irritable and nasty and hostile and aggressive and things like this. And that's what I was putting out into our relationship. And then, of course, over time, she started treating me that way as well. So when I got to the point of about 11 years in our marriage and having lived for, I forget how many years I was alive at that point, but I was in my mid 40s, I think, I decided that, okay, I'm done with this and I would like to improve the way that I'm doing things in the world. So I started practicing the teachings of the Buddha and transforming my mind. And as I was, my mind was becoming calmer and calmer and more peaceful. but I still had this old unwholesome Kamma to deal with because I had treated my wife in unwise ways. I was aggressive and bitter and harsh with her at different times. I was hostile with her. So for about a year and a half, even after I had transformed my mind, for about a year and a half, she was still being bitter and harsh and hostile with me. But I knew I had to extinguish this. And extinguishing this involves me not being angry and bitter and harsh back. Because in the past, if she was bitter and harsh and hostile, I would be bitter, harsh, and hostile right back. So it's like she would pick up the rubber ball of anger and throw it around, and I would pick it up and throw it around. And she would pick it up and throw it around, and I would pick it up and throw it around. And next thing you know, we've got all these rubber balls bouncing around in anger in our relationship, and we're both utterly upset with each other. But now I started doing something different because I understood the Eightfold Path. When she would be bitter and harsh and hostile with me, I wasn't that way with her. I would typically walk away. Right? As she was yelling and hollering and upset, I would just walk away. Sometimes as I gained more control over my mind, I would just sit there and smile and let her yell and holler at me because I knew this was my unwholesome Kamma, that I had done these exact same things to her in the past, and here I needed to experience this for myself. So she would yell and holler and scream at me, and I would just sit there and sometimes smile. And then when she would be done, I would just kind of why her with my hands together and say, "Thank you, dear." Or sometimes I wouldn't necessarily say that. I would just walk away. I'd say, "I love you," and just kind of walk away. Or other times when she would be yelling and hollering, I would just be sitting there and she would look like she's about done, but she still had something on the tip of her tongue. I would say, "Anything else, dear?" And then she would yell some more and yell some more. And then I would say, "Anything else?" And she would yell some more and yell some more because I knew she had to get it all out of her system. I had to extinguish this, and I was trying to put out this flame. I was trying to exhaust this fuel in her mind. So I would sometimes egg her on a little bit by saying, "Anything else, dear? Anything else that you would like to say? I understand. I used to treat you this way too. Get it all out." Right? And then she would get it all out and she would finally walk away. And then over time, a year and a half, I fully extinguished this. So even though we've been together 17 years, we've been happily together for about 6 years, right? Because it took me time to extinguish this unwholesome Kamma, where now we're at the point we never argue, we're never upset with each other, we're never frustrated or bitter or harsh, me with her or her with me. But it took us a good year and a half, me working on my mind, working on her mind, and now our relationship doesn't have any of that stuff whatsoever. But I also needed to extinguish my Kamma with my son, because my son, growing up, had seen his dad talk in unwise ways with his mother. So I was noticing my son was starting to be bitter and harsh and hostile with his mom, and they were having problems in their relationship. So I needed to help my son to gain some wisdom, and I needed to help my wife to gain wisdom of how to have conversations between the two of them so I could extinguish that part of it. Because while me and my wife weren't arguing anymore, they might have been off somewhere arguing and in the household. So I needed to help them learn how to extinguish the craving, anger, and ignorance so that then they could get to a peaceful place in their relationship. And now that's where things are with them, is that they don't get upset or argue or yell with each other. So this all got set into motion from when I was a child growing up, learning to be bitter, harsh, and hostile. This is the way I was functioning around my wife and my son. And even though I had transformed my mind, I still had to extinguish this with them. Where oftentimes as we're seeing things that we prefer not to occur around us, you might be putting your expectations on people and trying to control people. Or you might think that your role is to try to change other people and force other people to change. Where in reality, where the work needs to start is within your own mind. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you the Eightfold Path, because that work to transform your mind and transform your life has to start with you. And when I started with myself and started improving my own mind, then I was able to help other people. They still had to choose to learn and practice the teachings. They still had to extinguish their own craving, anger, and ignorance. But those were choices that they started being willing to make because they started seeing me become more peaceful. In situations where they would be arguing and frustrated and agitated, and they would try to pull me into it, I would just smile and I would just walk away, right? And they would know, like, wow, Dad is so peaceful. How did he do that, right? And they started being interested in what I was doing. So they were then starting to learn the teachings of the Buddha. So you're going to have various things coming back to you. Even if you could snap your fingers today, which you can, and perfectly practice these teachings, you're going to have unwholesome Kamma coming back to you. So you're going to need to train your mind, become more peaceful, become more joyful, become wiser, practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. And now in situations where you might have in the past been angry and bitter and harsh back to people, you realize that's the last thing you're interested in doing. So when my wife was being bitter and harsh and hostile with me, I knew the very last thing I was interested in doing was putting out any bitterness or hostility, because it was just going to come back to me. So that's why oftentimes what I would do early on is just walk away. So you're going to need to be able to train your mind so that you can control your mind in these situations. But now in these situations, when you have unwholesome results coming back to you, make new decisions through the Eightfold Path. All those factors that you've been learning. And you're going to need to dial this in and get closer and closer. And you're going to need to reach out for support. And you're going to need to ask help through posting in our Facebook group, through asking questions in class, through sending me a private message, or scheduling personal guidance with me, and talking over some of the various situations that you're either about to encounter, or that you're currently encountering, or something that's already happened, and you need to gain some insight and wisdom so that you can solve this. Because oftentimes when we experience difficulties and struggles in life, we run away from it. And if you run away from the difficulties and struggles that you're encountering, you're just ensuring that that's going to repeat again. Because whatever unwise decisions that you made that led to those particular unwholesome results, if you run away from it, you haven't cultivated wisdom, and you're just ensuring that those same things are going to occur again. But if when you're experiencing unwholesome results, if you turn around and you walk towards it, meaning you're reading books, you're consulting with your teacher, you're meditating, you're getting help, then you're walking towards the problem. You're walking towards this challenge. You're cultivating the wisdom that you need so that this thing doesn't reoccur again. And each time one of these things occur, you cultivate more wisdom. Now you can make different decisions that you experience different results. Now, the last thing I'll share with you guys is something related to the laws of society, and then I'll once again open up to any and all questions that you guys have. Now, sometimes when people hear me talk about the natural law of Kamma and they understand that I share, you can't run and hide from the natural law of Kamma. You will experience the results of your decisions. Someone raise their hand and say, hold on a second, teacher. What about who had the bloody footprint at the murder scene? The murder weapon was found in their bedroom, tucked under their mattress. They went to court and they were found not guilty. Didn't they escape their Kamma? Didn't they hide from it? Didn't they not experience their Kamma? The answer is no. They haven't run and hid from their Kamma, because the laws of society, they are imperfect. They're created by humans, and therefore, as they're created, implemented, and enforced, they're not being done so equally and fairly, because these laws of society are being created by human beings, and they're being enforced by human beings. And human beings in the unenlightened state have craving, anger, and ignorance in the mind. So they're making all kinds of mistakes as they're implementing the laws of society. But the natural law of Kamma isn't controlled by any one particular being. So therefore, it's being administered perfectly, and everybody's experiencing the results of their decisions. So while this individual might have gone to court and been found not guilty, they can't run and hide from the results of their decisions. They're experiencing certain results you may not be associating with the natural law of Kamma. So for example, if somebody truly was potentially guilty of murder, where the murder weapon was found in their bedroom, the bloody footprint was there, and this is all in the news, but they were found not guilty, they're experiencing a bad reputation, because this is going to spread throughout the community. Even if it's not in the news, people are going to talk about this all throughout the community, and they're going to have this bad reputation. They're also going to experience certain sickness and disease, physical and mental pain, and you can experience this shorter lifespan, because when your mind's angry, and you have enough anger in your mind to actually go and kill another human being, if you've done that, then that anger isn't just towards that one person. That anger is there in the mind at other times in your day-to-day life too. And when your mind is angry like that, it's putting stress and strain on the body. And now you might have a shorter lifespan as a result of having all that anger in your mind. So with that hostility, that aggression that's in there, it's not just coming out towards that one person that you've murdered, it's coming out towards all these other people too. And now that you can be involved in fights, you can be killed. This is all being experienced by the individual who has murdered, but they were found not guilty in court. So being found guilty or not guilty in court, this is just one act of your Kamma. You're experiencing fights, being killed yourself. You can also, because of your bad reputation, It's of income or a loss of wealth. This is part of your Kamma as having killed that individual. You can have difficulties in relationships because, again, that bitterness and hostility, that aggression that it took to kill that human being, it's not just in that relationship that this individual has done that. They've also exerted that anger and hostility in other relationships too. So because they're not able to get along in their relationships, while they were found not guilty, they're also having all these other difficulties in their other relationships too. They're also going to have difficulty securing and progressing in their employment. If they do find a job and they are working, they're going to have difficulties because of their craving, anger, and ignorance in their mind. They're going to have difficulties progressing in employment. They're going to have difficulty securing housing and acquiring basic necessities to sustain their life. This is all the unwholesome Kamma that's coming back to them as a result of having killed. So it's not just going to jail or going to prison that is the results of their decisions. That is part of your Kamma, but it's not the only part. So these laws, while we should always aspire for them to be more equal, they should be more fairly implemented, you need to understand that the laws of society, they're not able to be created and implemented and enforced equally and fairly for all beings. Ultimately, the part of the natural law of Kamma that each individual is experiencing is that as you're making unwise decisions and you're experiencing the results of that, the unwholesome Kamma that you're experiencing is discontentedness itself and rebirth. When you're experiencing sadness and anger and frustration or any of these other discontent feelings like jealousy and grief and despair and stress and anxiety, is the unwholesome Kamma. Because you have craving in your mind, because there's anger, because of this unknowing of true reality or this ignorance, you're going to be experiencing discontentedness. But when you fully implement the Eightfold Path and you train your mind and purify the mind of the three poisons or the three unwholesome roots, you can ultimately get to a point where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy, where the mind is actually enlightened, where you will no longer experience any discontentedness. So by the time you fully extinguish craving, anger, and ignorance, and you're fully practicing and fully purified the mind, where you're practicing generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom, the mind will be peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently. You'll experience the focus, the concentration, the clarity, the deep memory. You'll notice your personal and professional relationships are at ease because you're no longer making decisions in your relationships through craving, anger, and ignorance. So your relationships are blossoming, and you'll see that all your relationships, whether they're personal or professional, will be at ease, and you won't have any hostility or bitterness in any of your relationships whatsoever. And you won't even experience a bad mood anymore because the causes and conditions that are producing that effect or that result of discontentedness in your mind, the grumpiness and irritability, you've extinguished it. You've fully eradicated the pollution of the mind. So now you're fully experiencing only wholesome Kamma. By the time you get to enlightenment, you're only experiencing wholesome Kamma. But like Fiona's question was sharing, you're still going to experience a flat tire. You're still going to experience, a broken windshield. This is impermanence. There's 5 things that are unattainable. No matter how enlightened you are, there's 5 things that you will never be able to attain. You can't attain the elimination of old age, of sickness and death, and you can't eliminate loss, and you can't eliminate destruction. These are the 5 unattainable things. You will experience old age, you will experience sickness, you will experience death, you will experience loss, and you will experience destruction, because this is the universal truth of impermanence. So it doesn't matter how enlightened you are, you'll still experience those things. So when you extinguish your Kamma, you've extinguished the causes and conditions that are producing unwholesome results in your life, and some of those unwholesome results are the discontentedness and the rebirth and the things that I've mentioned here. But you will still experience certain impermanence. But by this point, you won't be frustrated that your tire's flat, or you won't be angry that your windshield has been chipped, or you won't be agitated that you've gotten this paint on your car, because you're not craving permanence and you understand that this is part of the universal truth of impermanence. So these are the 5 unattainable things, and otherwise you're going to be experiencing certain results, either wholesome or unwholesome. So this is everything that I have to share with you guys today based on the natural law of Kamma and studying it to this level of detail. but I'm always open to any questions that you guys have to go deeper, because remember, I'm teaching to a certain level of detail, and then as you guys ask questions, we go deeper. So if you guys have any questions, you can put it into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can electronically and ask any questions that you like, and open up in your mic and asking any of those questions. Okay, Tommy, I see you saying thank you for the guidance that I provided you earlier. You're welcome. Pleased to help you. Questions anywhere else? Let me just check. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So what I'll do is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining and deciding today is a day that you'd like to learn and understand the teachings of the Buddha, because as you're learning and developing your mind, it's helping you, it's helping those close to you, and it's helping all of humanity. Because as you're making more and more harmless decisions, you're going to be producing less and less harm for other people to have to deal with. So you're producing more and more wholesome Kamma for yourself, and the people around you are not having to deal with any kind of harm that you're putting out. So this is the very best thing you could ever do for your life, is learning and growing and developing on the path to enlightenment. Next week on Sunday, I'm going to be in chapter 10 in this book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled, What is Merit? This is a specific type of wholesome Kamma that I'm going to teach you about, and helping you to develop your practice around these particular aspects that I'm sharing in chapter 10. So remember, you can read that before or after class by either downloading the book, by taking it and go printing it, by getting a printed version on Amazon, or by ordering it in our temple. We have copies at the temple here in Chiang Mai that you can just reimburse us for the printing cost, and you can get a version of this book, because there are certain things in the book that aren't in the classes, and there are certain things in the classes that aren't in the book. So you'd like to be reading and coming to the classes and then doing your meditations as well. And this is what's going to bring down the pollutions of your mind and increase the wholesome qualities of generosity, loving kindness, and wisdom. So next week, I'm going to help you to understand merit, because you wouldn't be able to get to enlightenment without understanding that important topic. This Wednesday, we're going to be doing loving kindness meditation together, because now we've done the 4-part series on breathing mindfulness meditation, the 4-part series on chanting, and we did the 4-part series on loving kindness meditation as well. So now, each Wednesday, I'm going to just be rotating back and forth between breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation, and opening up to any and all questions that you guys have related to the teachings of the Buddha and any challenges that you're having to understand them. So you can use Wednesday as a time to come to class and get answers to any and all questions that you like, or listen to other people's questions and be able to learn from them as well. So sometimes people listen to the replay just to be able to meditate with us and to be able to listen to the questions that other people have, and then be able to learn from that. So thank you all for joining today, and perhaps we'll see you guys in a future class. Have a very lovely and wonderful rest of your day. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.